Town and seconded by Art Browning that we approve the minutes for the meeting of November 21st, 2024. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Down and seconded. All in favor, say aye. By Art Browning that we approve the minutes for the meeting of November 21st, 2024. Is there any discussion? All opposed, say. Any abstentions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you. Down and seconded. All in favor, say aye. We look at item number 3. Browning that we approve the minutes for the meeting of November 21st, 2024. Is there any discussion? Brought to us by the Office of Information in the Abstention Center. Practices. Oh, wait, hearing none. Thank you. Down and seconded. Favor, say aye. We look at item number 3. Browning that we approve the minutes for the meeting of November 21st, 2024. Is there any discussion? Brought to us by the Office of Information in the Abstention Center. And as we go through the oh, wait, hearing none. Thank you. Down and seconded. Favor, say aye. We look at item number 3. Browning that we approve the minutes for the meeting of November 21st, 2024. Is there any discussion? Brought to us by the Office of Information in the Abstention Center. And as we go through the oh, wait, hearing none. Thank you. Down and seconded. Favor, say aye. We look at item number 3. Browning that we approve the minutes for the meeting of November 21st, 2024. Is there any discussion? Brought to us by the Office of Information in the Abstention Center. And as we go through the oh, wait, hearing none. Thank you. Down and seconded. Favor, say aye. We look at item number 3. Browning that we approve the minutes for the meeting of November 21st, 2024. Is there any discussion? Brought to us by the Office of Information in the Abstention Center.
Extreme gratitude. We are so happy that she could finally breathe because you guys have actually done some amazing stuff and we are really grateful. Extreme.
I just want to echo what Jack
We
said.
are so happy
To have
she could
Christian
finally breathe
for another time.
because you guys have actually done some amazing stuff.
6-year term instead of the shorter one. But for the time being, we'll take what we got. And we're so glad that she's still with us.
Thank you, Bob. Go.
Yeah, we want to, on behalf of Ohana Pakale, we couldn't be happier to have this reappointment of Christine as the Oversight Coordinator. So we're very happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Cole. Anyone else? Yes, Nichols.
Aloha, Nikos Leverins with Drug Policy Forum of Hawaii. Kristen has done an amazing job in the time that she's been here, and I hope that her office is given the full support of the legislature and the governor in the years ahead. And thank you, mahalo to her and to the commission for the vital work that it's doing. Mahalo.
Thank you, Mr. Leverins. Seeing no one else.
Are we allowed to comment, Mark, or should we wait?
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, you know, as a commissioner and as a retired and us retired judges, we're obligated by law to be patient, dignified, and courteous. And Kristen sets the benchmark to that. That doesn't mean Kristen and we don't disagree. We sometimes disagree in a good way without being disagreeable. That's a two-way street. So I, for one, I really appreciate Kristen here, and I hope all of DCR understands that, and they can follow that, be patient, dignified, and courteous. So, Kristen, welcome aboard again, and you and your entire Ohana. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, guys. Before I bring, I'm going to ask Christian to go ahead and say a few words. I just want to say, literally, last January when we started the legislative session, it was a real battle for us. We were literally fighting for salary, fighting for, Hawaii, the commission itself, and whether or not we were still going to be in existence. We had budget issues. We were only alive last year because the governor funded us. So, you know, the first 4 months was probably very stressful on all of us at the commission to keep us above water. Yeah, and hopefully have a future. Yeah, and you know, we ended the legislative session with a baby. So we call that the 2024 stress baby. But he came early and distracted Christian from all the legislative drama that we had. And you know, we gave her a break, and then
I think it was we rescued her from all the drama.
rescued her. And then as soon as she came back, we gave her new stress. In regards to, you know, we had to do interviews for another oversight coordinator. And so when the governor announced that he picked her, we were overjoyed and excited. But it's been a crazy year, and I'm just so proud of how Kristen held herself and her vision and her passion for the job, no matter if she knew she was going to have it or not. You know, she just stuck in there and hung in there. So, and then
I think it was we rescued her from all the drama.
Rescued her. We appreciate Kristen hanging in for 2024, and really just showing her that Aloha does work. You know, at the end of the year, we can say Aloha works. So, Kristen, anything you want to say to the community and all your supporters?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. It's really meaningful to me. It has been a wild year. Arguably one of the most stressful, but also one of the most beautiful and transformational years of my life, I think. And so I'm so grateful to every single person who supported me and supported the work in our office throughout this journey. I obviously would not be here without the community, so I'm extremely grateful, and I'm extremely grateful for the commission's support. I'm very excited. I told Mark, you know, I think this is the first time since I started that I have some type of, you know, longevity, I guess, in my job. You know, I'm not worried about losing it in the next few months or the next year. So I'm very excited about that. I think there's so much work to do. I think this is the year that we're really going to soar. And so I can't wait for 2025, but very grateful for 2024. And thank you all so much for your kind words and your testimony and the hours that you all spent coming in person on Friday nights at the legislature. I appreciate all of you, and I'm very grateful to be in this position and to continue to do this work.
Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate your comments. Thank you, everybody. Let's go ahead and move on. Actually, we'll just lead right into the Kristen's reports. Is that you, Kristen?
Yeah.
Is there any testimony at this time that people would want to on our monthly oversight coordinator report that's been posted? All these reports have been posted: the Leioapapa Correctional Facility Tour Report and the Halawa Correctional Facility Tour Report. I'll take
Mark, very quickly. So OIP let us know that we should give the reports first. Okay. And then open it up for public testimony, and then close public testimony, open up for commissioner discussion.
Okay. So, thank you for the correction. We'll go ahead with the reports, Kristen.
All right. So bear with me, everyone. We do have a few reports to get through, but I will keep it quick as possible. So first of all, we do have a couple deaths in custody to announce. One of them was a late notice, but that was not on the department. The department notified us immediately. I actually missed it in our last report. So on October 20th, 2024, a person in custody, male, 34 years old, was found unresponsive in his cell with a sheet around his neck at the Halawa Correctional Facility. Staff immediately cut the sheet from the individual, called 911, and performed CPR until EMS arrived. The individual was transported to Palimomi, where life-saving measures continued, but unfortunately, at approximately 6:04 p.m., the individual was pronounced deceased by attending ER doctor. This incident does appear to be a suicide. Additionally, we do need to report that on Thursday, December 5th, 2024, around 2:15 a.m., a person in custody, male, 33 years old, was found unresponsive in his cell with a sheet around his neck at the Halawa Correctional Facility. Staff immediately cut the sheet from the individual, called 911, and performed CPR until EMS arrived. Unfortunately, around 3:46 a.m., the individual was pronounced deceased by the city and county EMT. this incident also appears to be a suicide, which is the 4th suicide this year. Budget request. So our budget request was submitted to BNF, and we did get a response. So initially we requested $572,749 for fiscal year 26 and $403,217 for fiscal year 27. Ultimately, the governor's office did come back and is allowing us to move forward with $196,863 for fiscal year 26 and $271,445 for fiscal year 27. The biggest difference in this request is that BNF did initially remove the case management system, which the governor's office put back in, which is great. But ultimately, the consultant for the study on the bed utilization study was removed. In addition to one research and policy associate and a clerical assistant. So ultimately, we didn't do too bad. I'm not upset with this request. We are getting 2 salary adjustments for the reentry oversight specialist and the jail oversight specialist. We're also potentially getting a prison oversight specialist, a research and policy associate, inter-island correctional facility travel, mainland facility travel, memberships and conferences, office operational expenses, and then a case management system. So all of that is broken down in the report. You can take a deeper look. But overall, I'm hoping that we'll have luck with that request.
Kristen, I want to bring to everybody's attention what is in the report are the add-ons to our existing budget. So she did not present what our whole budget is. These are add-ons, so we're being increased by 196,000 fiscal year 26 and 271 for fiscal year 27.
Yes, thank you, Martha. Yes, yep. So the directions that we were given were to just focus on add-ons. So if everybody can support our budget request this year, we would be extremely appreciative. The next 2 I'm actually going to skip over because those next reports will be covered. That's the tour of WCF and the tour of HCF. And then next is current projects. So the correction staff survey and report, I'm very excited to announce it will be released in January. We are hoping to do a presentation to the legislature the week before the legislature opens. We just need House approval, but it does look like there's interest in the Senate. And so we're really looking forward to that. And then the reentry report is still being worked on, and we're hoping for either January or February on that. And Kara has graciously agreed to hop back on Zoom, no matter where she is, so that she can present all the work that she did on that report. We're very grateful for Kara Campani on everything that she's done in that report. So that'll be coming out soon. Oh, lastly, the House Concurrent Resolution 23 Task Force. That report, as many of you know, is very delayed. It was initially due in October, but we had to wait due to some information that we were waiting on from the Council of State Governments. We do have that information now, and so we are finalizing the report. That report will be sent to all task force members first so that they can review, make sure that they're good with it, and then we will be posting that to the public. So keep an eye out for that. I imagine that would also be in early January. I do apologize that so many reports are coming out at the same time. But it starts the year 2025 off with a lot of exciting information. Do you want me to move to the next report, Mark?
Yes.
Okay. So the next 2 reports are facility-specific reports, one being the Leioapapa Correctional Facility and one being Halava. So recently, in November, we toured the Leioapapa Correctional Facility. There isn't too much to report on. We actually really focused on the prior recommendations. So one of the recommendations was to increase the population at Leioapapa, as Leioapapa is one of the most rehabilitative facilities in Hawaii. You'll remember that this is very similar to the Kulani recommendation from our last meeting. And unfortunately, I have the same information to announce, which is that not only has the population not gone up, but it's actually decreased since we put out that recommendation. And so last year, Leioapapa had 181 individuals. This year, it had 136. So it has gone down, which the commission was really disappointed to see. The next recommendation is to expand the opportunity to be housed at minimum security facility to those who are medically frail. And so we're talking about in general, you know, people with medical issues. Leioapapa is considered more of a work camp. When you go there, you're required to work, you're required to go to school. People have pretty long days. And so there's two different pieces to this. One, if you're not able to do the work or to attend school, et cetera, they're typically not going to accept you. The second piece is that Leioapapa is not very close to a hospital. And so there is a department policy that states you must be, I think it's 30 minutes, you must be within 30 minutes of an ambulance ride for certain medical conditions. And arguably they don't fulfill that. And so there's two different reasons why Leioapapa is saying that they will not accept medically frail. The last one is to identify a vessel to donate excess produce to the community. One factor that's limiting Leioapapa is the inability to donate excess produce because they don't have a specific vendor to help do that and to get it out to the community. Before, I believe Leioapapa was doing that with
Through Correctional Industries.
Thank you, Martha. Through Correctional Industries. That practice has ended as Correctional Industries has gone down in production quite a bit. And so that recommendation has not been fulfilled. So ultimately, the big takeaway here is that 3 recommendations went out and none of them have been fulfilled. Mark, would you like me to move on?
Can I make a comment? We spent a lot of time talking to the warden and the chief of security up there. And a really big concern of mine is they say that they get referrals from both the mainland facilities and from Leioapapa, and that inmates are not prepared to work and they end up sending them back. And this really brings to mind is what are we doing as an organization system-wide to prepare people to work? We used to have a very robust correctional industries program that hired well over 200 people, might have been closer to 300 people, definitely setting you up to work so that when they went to Kulani and Leioapapa, they were prepared. I don't have the solution for this, but this is something we have to work on. How do we prepare people to go from one step to the next? And how do we reduce the resistance within the system to allow people to really get their feet wet as they move into these new sections? So it was frustrating at times having that conversation. Another thing, this is just my idea, but when we visited Leioapapa, again, in the medical unit, there is a significant number of inmates, about 20, that are medically put into the unit, in the medical unit, because they can't live in a module. I think that we can take one of the buildings at Leioapapa and make that a quote nursing home, and then train inmates to work with people in this nursing home. So you're doing training for jobs, plus for putting people who are medically ill, and I shouldn't say medically ill, but medically have problems, you know, they can't walk or they need diapers or whatever, put them in a setting that is more humane at end of life. And that's just my piece on that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Martha, before we get into commission discussion, I know we have to have the public comment first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I know it's a different.
We'll take that public testimony now. If anybody wants to make any comments on Christian's report or any of the reports that was posted online.
And then I just have Leioapapa left, Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Christian. Finish.
That's okay. I'll get through it quickly. Leioapapa, I know that the commissioners are going to want to talk about this a fair amount, but I think the bottom line with Leioapapa is that it is an extremely restrictive environment. It's not therapeutic. It's not rehabilitative. It's total and complete concrete, very little. Well, there's no murals, there's no color, there's no artwork. And so, you know, I think that was one of the biggest concerns is how much time people are spending in their cells. You know, even if they're getting out to recreation, what are they to do outside of walk inside a circle? And so that's kind of in the body of the report. But there's 2 additional recommendations added on in addition to the follow-up recommendations. So I'll cover the 2 additional and then, you know, briefly cover the follow-up. So number 1, incorporate therapeutic and rehabilitative practices throughout the facility. The warden has already started to do this. I will say the education building is full to the brim every time I go there. He has done a really great job at making sure that people are getting out into the classes. But there aren't enough classes for the entire population, so people are still spending a fair amount of time in those housing units. And so one thing that we brought up is consider reopening and staffing the large yard, so individuals can enjoy grass, fresh air, sunlight, and have an opportunity to look away from that concrete, right? That large yard also has a huge baseball field that I think has been unutilized since, I think Martha said, the early 80s. And additionally, consider incorporating murals. The women's facility has done a fantastic job about that, incorporating these big, beautiful, bright murals throughout the facility. I think that if they started doing that throughout Main Street, it would give a really less restrictive feel. And lastly, with that, consider planting native plants throughout Main Street for additional color and also connection to Aina. The warden did add grass, which is great to see. But again, there's more that could be done. And the second recommendation is to include medical and mental health staff in future construction plans. In the body of the report, it kind of talks about how the commission had toured a new space for construction of a mental health and physical health space. And so it's an addition to what's on the upper level. It's in the basement. It would be an addition so that, they can add more people. The biggest concern about this is that when the commission had talked to mental health and medical staff and asked directly, have you been involved in these construction plans? They said no. They have no idea, what's on the horizon, what it's going to look like, what it's going to entail, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's been something that we've seen in the past. We've seen that at women's, we've seen that at different facilities. And so, we really want the department to consider adding in the people who are actually doing the work in those spaces into the construction plans. And then also, of course, make sure that you ensure, ample lighting, adding in as many windows as possible. It is a basement space, and considering bright light for a less restrictive space, especially for that population. And then very quickly, just a follow up on the previous recommendations. So increased non-security staffing must be a priority for transitioning to a rehabilitative and therapeutic space. Now, the department has done a decent job on this. Last year, the facility had 8 social work vacancies, which resulted in caseloads of 80 plus people per social worker. And during the visit, we had learned that there are no social work vacancies. And so that's fantastic. And then the education vacancies have gone down from 4 to 2, which is fantastic as well. One concern, though, is that there is a pretty large vacancy rate for psych social workers and also clinical psychologists. And so we did note that in the report, and that needs to be a priority as well. We also recommended to permanently close the special needs facility. Although the special needs facility is closed now, which has really helped with staffing rates at Halava, it's not clear whether that's a permanent decision or not. The commission also recommended to prioritize and expedite capital improvement projects to repair electricity and the perimeter fence. So last year, the commission had reported out that about 20% of all the cells didn't have electricity. And that is still an issue, but it is being worked on currently. That is the reason why the rate at Saguaro has gone up, because Halava is closing one unit at a time completely so that they can fix all the issues and then reopen as they can, bring people back home. But one thing that we did want to note is that as of December 3rd, 2024, Halava remains, around 725 people. The facility is designed for 992. And Halava has gone up pretty significantly at 939. The reason why we wanted to highlight this is because although we knew that was the plan, we knew that was going to happen, it has been over a year now. And so, we just want to make sure that people don't get stuck in Arizona. We want to make sure that that number is still remaining low as the construction wraps up. Next is to expand the correctional industry's work line to include specific training and skilled trades that would lead to gainful employment after incarceration. This recommendation has not been fulfilled. Also, increased training and support for uniform staff. This recommendation has not been fulfilled. Increased training and support for case/unit managers to better meet the population's needs upon release. And so, Commissioner Town, this goes back to when you're talking about people just being released and sitting under, the tree. This recommendation has not been fulfilled. And then lastly, the department should support legislation efforts towards compassionate release or transfer to a more appropriate medical setting for the severely ill. Again, this is a recommendation we're following up on. So this was posted last year. Not only has this not been fulfilled, the DCR has refused to support or even stay neutral on compassionate release. Instead, the DCR has testified against compassionate release legislation. So that happened last year, and I believe it will be happening again this year based on conversations I've had. That is extremely concerning for me, especially when seeing just how people are in Leioapapa in that medical unit. It's a pretty devastating space to be in, and even more devastating space to die in. And so I wanted to make sure that we highlighted that. And Mark, those are all of the reports.
We'll open up for some public testimony at this time. I'll look at any hands raising. Kevin, is that a hand up? Or is that the mouse? Sorry.
I don't know.
Ron had his hand up.
No, it's not the name.
Okay. All right. Not hearing any comments. Any
No,
comments?
Ron.
Go ahead, Ron.
I only read the November report more recently, so I'm sorry if I'm commenting on some of the things that was in a previous report. But first, I wanted to congratulate Judge Mike Towns for being reappointed for another 4-year term on the commission. I think I read that in the last report. And I want to thank the Oversight coordinator for including in the report the photograph of the visit at the Makahiki on November 13th. I think it's really important that the Makahiki is seen as a key event in the rehabilitation of our men. And I wanted to thank both the coordinator and the chair for joining in that Makahiki, and then from the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, Deputy Director Sana Munoz for joining in. And to see all of us together supporting that event, I think was really encouraging to the men. I counted about 72 men who joined us from 6:30 in the morning to 3, but I'm guessing that when the closing ceremony happens, that number will increase even more because they will see the support that people came. Now, one of the things that I want the Oversight Commission to help us with is who qualifies to join the Makahiki. Now, as I understood in the past, people were asked to make a decision. Is your religion Christian or Hawaiian? And I think that's a false distinction. I'm a retired pastor of a Hawaiian church, and I think that it's understood that you can be Christian and Hawaiian at the same time. So you have traditional, spiritual, other customary ties to your Hawaiianness, and you can be a Christian too. So I think to you, if that distinction is still being used, that it should be questioned and changed. And I think especially Mark Patterson, who's steeped in his culture, can give personal testimony about that. And so I think that's a real big concern for us if people who are, asked to make a decision if you're one or the other. I think that you can be a seeker and be trying to figure out how does it all fit together. You can be at various stages, but I think you should not be forced to make a choice between the two. So I really want that to be taken up as part of the Oversight Commission agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald. I appreciate those thoughts. Just want to remind that we want to stick with the agenda items, but I appreciate those thoughts, Ron. Yeah, commissioners, any last minute comments on the reports?
I made mine.
Well, go ahead, Mark. You're on mute, Judge.
Mark Browning, you're on mute.
I really want to say how much I appreciated
the report that Kristen generated as always, but particularly with respect to Halava. I think she highlighted a couple of points that I think are essential, I think, at least in reflecting the attitudes and the philosophies that we're trying to somehow prevail against and bring some common sense and reason and compassion and humanity. The fact of the matter is that was the first time that I'd ever been to Halava. I can't tell you what a shock it was for me to see it and me to be in it from a psychological, emotional, and a mental health way. It immediately had a devastating impact. I could feel that everyone in there was deprived of sense, sound, for the most part. The sensory deprivation was something that just built as you went from one unit to another. There's nothing but concrete blocks everywhere, even in the recreation area. There's no color. There's a lot that the department can do, as mentioned by Kristen, with respect to murals. There is land adjacent to some of these places that's not used. And there are things that anybody within, the department's fallback, at least what I've been able to reflect upon and see in the last number of meetings, has always been to an extent the lack of money. But the fact of the matter is that there's so much of this can be done with almost nothing in way of state funding. And I know that from the work that we did in the juvenile justice system in our facilities. And Mark can speak to that as well. There's simple things that can be done. And that directly leads into the climate of mental health issues, lack of good mental health that prevails within that institution. And that was not just reflected in the inmates that I saw. It's not just reflected in the statistics, the forced suicides and the other different sort of unbearable and unspeakable things that occur. But just the living conditions, all that sort of leads to, if you look, if there's supposed to be help there, and we're relying on that mental health unit, and I spoke to them at length, as other commissioners did, the folks that work in that mental health unit, I know what Mr. Johnson wrote in his responses, but they talked about the fact how overwhelmed they are and the concerns they have regarding their own mental health. I think that whole sort of systematic issue that exists that Mr. Johnson referred to with respect to DOH and Department of Corrections, the fact that one of his responses for why the situation exists at in the mental health unit in Lava is because of the Department of Health taking a number of its psychiatrists and psychologists away from the system itself, and therefore they don't have. That was, as I understand, one of his responses that I read. That absolutely doesn't make any sense to me. That's not something that cannot be fixed. That's a state governance issue. And if Mr. Johnson or anyone else in the DCR understood, we're committed to making changes. And this is my sense from my experience, as I said, in the judiciary and dealing with these issues, system issues. You would be able to resolve some of it by bringing the Department of Health in. And why that's not being done at that level is a question that I think we should ask, and I hope we ask at some later date. Thank you. I'm sorry it was so long.
Oh, that was good, Mark. Thank you so much. Mike?
Yeah, briefly here, when I was on the parole board, we had a lot of people that were seriously ill, and they're there for compassionate release. And I think it's an axiom. Chair Patterson talked about the aloha spirit. Everyone certainly in custody, and everyone in Hawaii deserves a gentle and compassionate passing or transition. I really want to emphasize that. I'm not at all happy that we don't have somebody from the DCR here today, because it feels like the sound of one hand clapping. And I really mean that. It's the minimum of collegiality. For us to have oversight, we have to have someone that'll listen a little bit and then give us a straight up. I don't mind people disagreeing. I'm used to that. But that's a huge thing. And so compassion, gentle pathing is important. The other thing I heard is food security. I don't know if Chaz Williams is here today, but food security is a big deal in Hawaii. I think most of our food stuffs come on the airlines, not out of our yards. You know, my wife and I have grown bananas for 40 years, but we have to ask these hard questions. So I think it's very, very important. And the third thing is, one of my mentors is Lucian Leape, L-E-A-P-E. He does, out of Harvard, he does all the after action report, the death reviews. He is an amazing person. So please look up Lucian Leape and these after action reports, which is used all over the world in hospitals, military, airline crashes. And we just had one got out by the airport. So just be aware that there are best practices there. And I'm not happy that we can't recommend those to DCR. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mike. Hey, Ron, you have any comments? Ron, he's on in Kona, so maybe the.
No, I echo Mark. I echo the prior commissioner's statements, and certainly we've not done enough. And I think the visits that we've been doing to this through these prison systems, the corrections, really opens our eyes and gives us more of a feel on what we should be doing, and not just reading reports, but going there and seeing it for ourselves. But I agree with Kristen and the rest of the commissioner's statements. Thank you.
So a lot of what I'm about to say, you're going to hear throughout this meeting, but basically, it's been 2 years now of the commission visiting our jails and our prisons. And every report that Christian has issued is online. Yeah, we have enough reports to online, even for you folks to look at and assess and evaluate, to understand where DCR is in terms of its medical care, its mental health care, its programs, and its operations in terms of staffing and in terms of managing the facility populations, and as well as their structures. Yeah, and it's safe to say right now that every facility, either they're overwhelmed or they're underutilized, right? So nobody at this particular point in time is doing the mission that they're supposed to be doing for the system, okay? And it's important that we understand that, because now, you know, when we looked at the information that we provided, the recommendations that we gave to the department for remedies, and what has been done and what has not been done, we're not where we are. We're not where we need to be to say that the issues have been resolved. Okay, we're 2 years into this new administration and nothing has changed, right? It's upsetting to hear about the suicides, and the end of the year is always a bad time, but it's as commissioners, we need to be aware that we have the information when we enter into the next legislative session, that we're going to have to be calling people to the table and say, hey, listen, we've been saying this for 2 years. We don't want excuses, we want solution, and we need innovation. If Halawa's down 5 psychologists, that's almost $500,000. What are we doing to provide something while we wait for 5 psychologists on a population of nearly 800? Yeah. So, that's kind of where I'm at. I've been kind of quiet in 2 years, but it's all about gathering information and seeing that based on the recommendations from each of the jails, not once, but twice, if not more, that we are not at a place where the whole system is on a pause. Yeah. When COVID hit, it gave everybody an excuse not to do nothing. Yeah. We have not picked up to pre-COVID levels. And I'm not saying whether that was good or better or whatnot, but in the late 80s and the 90s, when I was at Halava, we had 300 inmates working a day, every day. Yeah. And now they have less than 100 working. There are so many things that have fallen and there is no motion to pick it back up. Yeah.
And what they're working on is not building skills. What they're doing in correctional industries is merely filling bags with store order. Nothing is going to translate into a job on the outside.
Yeah. So it's upsetting because we can no longer accept the academic rhetoric of this is what DCR is and supposed to be when we have online the proof to say that it's not happening. So the system is on pause and our job is how do we kickstart it back up again? Yeah, because it's going to take innovation and we don't want to hear. We know why it's not happening. We just want to know how you're going to resolve it, how we're going to push forward. So those are my comments on those reports. Christian, continue to do your good work in putting out those reports and putting together those tours. It's like to the point, and I just want to share this with the community and the commissioners. Every time we go back in there, the staff is holding us accountable. Didn't we tell you that the last time you was here? Look, they didn't do nothing. So what's the sense in talking to you? And so that's where our pressure is right now because they did tell us, and there's no action. But I do know that the staff is happy because they hear us talking about it and they see it online in our reports. So that continues to move forward. And again, we had a rough legislative session this past year, and we're going to have another one in 2025. Yeah. So that's my last comments for item number 7. Thank you, guys. Let's move on to item number 8.
Mark, let me ask. Is a transcript made of this? How does Tommy know or his staff know what we're talking about? Because it still is one hand clapping, and I want 2 or 3 hands. So,
Mike, I
yes.
can answer that. So we do live stream the meetings on YouTube and on Facebook, and then every meeting recording is again uploaded to YouTube just to make sure the whole meeting was captured. Tommy and his team, as far as I know, do watch the meetings based on some of the follow-ups they've sent me. I do believe they are watching the meetings and trying to respond accordingly. But obviously it would be more helpful, I think, and more fruitful to have them here real time.
I also understood that Tommy just comes for his section of the meeting and then bails out, does not stay for our whole meetings. And I don't have as much confidence that he's listening to the recordings of the meetings.
Well, Martha, he is the director, and the director should be open to information from the community and from us, and I think we deserve a response. So it's to me quite odd. I recommend. I know some people don't like Deion Sanders, the head coach of Colorado, but he has Miss Peggy on his 100-year-old woman giving him feedback. He has 2 ears and 2 eyes, and they're open. So I share what one of our observers today. I'm appalled, and I don't want to be appalled. I want to be a supporter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Item number 8 has to do with the water conditions at Saguaro. You want to open that? Oh, is there any testimony I'll take right now in the beginning before we discuss this?
Well, we should briefly talk about why it's on the agenda, and then we can open up because I know Wookie Kim is here who can expand a little more. Okay. But Mark, if you're I can briefly share. So the ACLU had initially reached out to us asking us to put this item on the agenda. Again, the ACLU is here. They'll be able to add a bit more context to what I'm about to share, but long story short, the ACLU did send a letter to the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation regarding contaminated and unsafe drinking water at the Saguaro Correctional Center. The letter does outline where their findings are coming from, and the several points of findings within their investigation that I'm sure ACLU will be able to expand on. DCR did respond, and I'll very briefly cover what they said since they are not here today. But long story short, they are responding that any claims that the water at Saguaro is undrinkable or causing medical issues is demonstrably false. That's what they wrote in their letter. They explained that there are many different reports that Saguaro is required to send to the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. And then in addition to those reports, the water is tested daily for chlorine residue, monthly for chloroform bacteria, annually for, halocetic acids, HAA, or triethylamines. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to say some of these words. And then every 3 years for lead and copper. They did add more information in their letter, but the big thing that they wanted to say is that these claims are false and that they were upset that the ACLU issued a letter and subsequent press release without first contacting either DCR or CoreCivic for the facts. So we wanted to include kind of both of those pieces, but again, I know Wookie Kim is here who can add a bit more about this issue.
Hello, Mr. Kim. You want to go ahead?
Yes. Good morning, Chair Patterson, Commission members. I know it's been a while. My name is Wookie Kim. I'm the legal director at the ACLU of Hawaii. So I think Kristen did a great job summarizing kind of what's kind of been happening. But in short, for the past half year or so, our organization has been receiving multiple reports about water quality issues. And we've had many conversations. We've received many letters from folks. And the theme really is that there's something wrong with the water. Now, I obviously won't be able to describe every last kind of report that we've received, but the trend is that the water tastes toxic and foul, and that more importantly, or as important, is causing some really harmful symptoms, including severe gastrointestinal distress, diarrhea, and then also kind of on the surface of the skin, itchy, dry, cracked, bleeding skin, which the prisoners call alligator skin. The problem has been so bad, in fact, that prisoners have been resorting to melting ice cubes because the ice machine has a water filter, and using that to get drinking water. And separately, we learned from a credible source, and I won't disclose the source, but that CoreCivic has been providing its staff with access to bottled water in 5-gallon water dispensers, and essentially all but instructed the staff to avoid drinking the tap water. So this all paints a really concerning picture. And of course, that's when we decided to send the letter to Director Johnson and the warden, CoreCivic warden, Weed. And as Kristen just noted, the response was somewhat disappointing because they accused us of making, quote, demonstrably false and, quote, unfounded statements. But in making those responses, they didn't point to anything that disproved anything that we had alleged. I mean, all they really said was that we do our own testing, we do it frequently, and our testing is fine. When the gist of our letter was to ask for an independent outside water quality expert to conduct tests of the water. Because as we have seen and experienced with everything happening at Red Hill, when the entity that's responsible for the water is the one testing and reporting about the safety and the quality of the water, there's a conflict of interest or there can be issues. And it wasn't until outside water quality experts analyzed the Navy's own tests that we realized, crap, they really messed things up. So we really want to reiterate this request. In fact, we have reiterated the request with DCR. Meanwhile, another important point that I want to make is that the letter suggests that DCR had already made plans to install water filters and that they, quote, completed installation of the filters recently. However, we received calls that confirmed that CoreCivic did not install a single water filter until the next day after we sent our demand letter. So the idea that this plan had been, set into motion months ago is somewhat suspicious, I guess. Now, since the demand letter, we've actually received a flood of letters, dozens of letters, calls, emails from family members. More and more folks are coming forward with their stories about how the water is causing immense health and other problems. And so, we don't have the access to the medical records or, the files that CoreCivic may have. So we don't have the ability at this stage to kind of definitively demonstrate that the water is causing these medical problems. But I will highlight a few points. One of which is that multiple individuals shared in letters that they had been incarcerated elsewhere. They were transferred to Saguaro. Before arriving at Saguaro, they'd had no medical or health issues. But after arriving, they started experiencing gastrointestinal issues, diarrhea, and all these other symptoms that I had just described earlier. That to me is telling and concerning. And then on the flip side, we've received lots of letters from individuals thanking us for ensuring that CoreCivic installed the water filters because they've reported that the water filters are making a difference. Not only does it taste better, but a lot of their health symptoms are improving. And that leads to the second request that we would have of the commission, which is to ensure that DCR replaces these filters and ensures their efficacy on a regular basis, because what we've learned is that the model of filter that was installed is residential grade, is only rated for 800 gallons. And in a pod of 100 plus individuals, assuming, a gallon per day of use, that's just, that's around a week, right? And we have been receiving recent reports that the water quality has deteriorated again, and these symptoms are returning. And so we really urge the commission to pressure or ask Director Johnson to ensure that these water filters are being replaced and/or that a commercial grade filter be installed. And the last side note on this is that these water filters are only in the common areas, which means that when prisoners are on lockdown and are limited to their cells, they don't have access to the clean or filtered water. And that has also created serious problems. So I'll stop there, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But, we are very, very concerned that this issue is not being adequately addressed. And we will continue to investigate, to talk to incarcerated individuals and really get to the bottom of this issue. And we request that the commission assist with this as well. Thank you.
Wookie, I just want to ask you to clarify for us, because we have to turn some of these maybe into motions, is you asked two things. So what was the first thing again?
Essentially that the Oversight Commission work with DCR to conduct an actual investigation into this water quality issue, including by engaging an outside independent water quality expert to conduct water testing. And here's another point on that, right? If DCR is so confident in the quality of its water, what harm would allowing a third party expert to test the water, what harm would that do other than to reassure all these concerned community members and individuals that, hey, actually the water is great. And the the second request is as to what we are framing as a temporary stopgap measure, which is the installation of the water filters in the common areas to ensure that the water filters are replaced and checked on a regular basis. Because we have received reports that some of the prisoners have been asking maintenance staff to replace the water filters, and staff have said, we're not going to do that. So that to me is very concerning as well. So it's those two issues. Please investigate this water problem at a higher level, including by engaging an independent expert, and then follow up on the water filter replacement schedule and plans.
Okay, thank you.
Any comments, Mike? Or any commissioner?
Kristen, have we received any complaints about the water?
Yeah, so when Mark and I were there for the Makahiki recently, there were individuals from every housing unit who participated in the Makahiki, and we did not hear any complaints about the water quality. With that said, it sounded like the filters that Wookie was referring to were placed directly after their letter was sent, which would have been October 29th. And so our tour to Saguaro was after that. But in general, no, we have not received complaints.
Mark, Wookie, has there been a literature search at litigation or best practices or evidence-based practices at other institutions, or is Core Civic responsive? That's a multiple question, sorry.
We're not at the stage, we're not the water quality experts, right? So we're not at the stage where we've researched what the best practices are in this context. But, given the multiple reports, the dozens of reports that we've received, we just want to make sure that the entity that's charged with the custody and care of about 1,000 Hawaii individuals is taking this seriously and is looking into it. But as we've kind of summarized today, their response was just everything you've said is demonstrably false. The water is safe to drink. We're nothing to see here. Who's
telling you that, Wookie?
So that was the letter. I mean, the theme is similar from both Ford and Weed and from Director Johnson. So Director Johnson's letter says that, because one of the requests we made was that bottled water be provided to prisoners as an interim measure until the investigation is kind of concluded. And the response was, bottled water will not be provided free of charge as the drinking water at SEC is completely safe for consumption.
Okay, one couple more questions, Wookie. Have you been to Saguaro?
No, I have not.
If you look out the door, you see what I remember best, Las Palmas, which had 3,000 California prisoners. That's why I'm asking about a literature search. If they have oversight, how can you learn from other Core Civic outfits?
I see. Well, one thing we have learned is that other prisoners that are held in Core Civic facilities from other states, including Idaho, Montana, I think some New Mexico prisoners are held at Saguaro as well. They've also now been receiving reports about the water issue. So, that's all I can share at this point. As far as whether Core Civic appears receptive, given the tone of their separate letter, I don't believe so.
Thank you. Their response to me is unacceptable. Thank you, Mark.
Wookie, this sounds very bureaucratic, and I'm sorry to say it, but the complaints have been sent to ACLU. So really, I believe that what we can do is support ACLU in what they're trying to achieve with resolving the water issue, because we have no complaints on our side. So I'm a little confused about how we can demand things when we have not received any of these complaints.
Well, I would say that the commission has oversight over DCR and over Director Johnson, and Director Johnson is responsible for the custody and care of the roughly 1,000 Hawaii individuals that are incarcerated at Saguaro, and so I guess I think that's totally within the authority or the scope of what the commission could do. But
And my question is, if we've had no complaints, what I think that we can do is say that we support ACLU in these efforts, that we believe they are of great importance, but we have to rely on the complaints that you folks have got.
That's fair. I guess one thing that we could do is get consent from the individuals that we've spoken to share some of these letters that we've received. Would that be something that the commission would be interested in?
I would be interested in that, yes.
Okay, so we'll follow up with, obviously to the extent possible, right? But we'll try to get consent to we'll probably have to anonymize because a lot of the prisoners have shared their fears of retaliation.
Yes.
But we would try to find some way to disclose or share with the commission the kind of firsthand letters and communications that we've received.
Also, any communication they have with us is also confidential. So,
Got it.
If they were willing to forward something that they sent to you, let them be assured that that is also confidential. It will not be shared.
That is a great point. I can encourage individuals to write directly to the commission as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, just have a couple questions. Have you folks had any communication or tried to communicate with any of Arizona's water companies?
Arizona's water companies, could you clarify what you're referring to in that context?
Whoever manages the water system.
Right. So that's what we're trying to kind of figure out is the source of the water. And it's our understanding that CoreCivic actually has its own water system supplying the water to the 4 facilities in the area, which then I think raises concerns again about lack of oversight or visibility. And when the information that's being shared is self-reported by CoreCivic, and we are also in parallel hearing, a pattern of problems that underscores the need for someone from outside of the system to look into it.
I understand. I just had watching the news last night, and the city wants to build that landfill in Waiiwa, and then the water guy came out and said no. So I was wondering if there's a water guy in Arizona that would give us an idea if he knows anything about the quality of the water in that portion of the desert.
So although I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Although we haven't been in direct communication with the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, we know that some individuals have, and essentially their response was, in fact, I believe we can share this. The ACLU of Idaho, I believe, reached out to, let me just make sure I'm getting my facts right. I believe the ACLU of Idaho reached out to the Idaho Department of Corrections, which spoke to the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. And basically they reported back that, it was kind of neutral things, that CoreCivic has not been found in violation of any sort of, the Clean Water Act, or has not been cited for water quality violations. But to me, that's not really, whether they've violated any laws is different from kind of, what do they think about the water, or have they identified any concerns about the water?
The other thing I wanted to add is, again, following the news, that Arizona has had a lot of trouble with Saudi Arabia taking so much groundwater to run their farms, which are for food for their animals in Saudi Arabia. And Arizona itself is trying to stop this from happening. So I'm wondering whether that could also be affecting the quality of water overall in the state.
You know, I mean, obviously the water situation in Arizona, you know, in the middle of the desert, and there's a lot. So I think Commissioner Town had mentioned the question of what do you know about literature studies. There are lots of public articles about water quality issues in that region of the state more generally. Now, without disclosing a source, based on a credible source, the water quality issues inside Saguaro are materially worse than kind of the baseline water quality conditions in the general community, in the general area.
Wookie, you've heard of Ernie Lau, right? He's a hero.
Yes.
Put him on your speed dialer. Start talking to him.
That's a good point. Thank you for that suggestion.
I think my recommendation, commissioners, is that we continue to look into the matter on our own. Yeah, I think we can support a report submitted by Wookie on the water and ask more questions. Yeah, and support some of the things that you said today, Wookie. I was there, a month ago. We were in an area with over 100 inmates for over 5 hours, and we heard multiple complaints. They would just come up to me, Christian or Sana, and we didn't hear anything about water. I'm not sure if Sana heard anything, but we did have, they did provide bottled water for us. And I did see the orange coolers around the area. Yeah. So, I'm not saying it's not happening, but we need to do our due diligence based on what you reported to us today to see where we can fit in and drive and find out some real answers.
Yeah, and Chair Patterson, just one sort of response to the point about that maybe there's a disconnect in who's reporting what. We did hear from. I did ask this question: why all of a sudden are people speaking up about this right now? And what I learned was that a lot of the prisoners felt that this was an issue that they had that they'd just given up hope, that there was no ability to impact the quality of the water because it's not, there are so many other issues, right? And perhaps for individuals, the other more serious, legally cognizable harms, those are the types of issues that they're going to raise if they only have one opportunity to speak up about something. So I think that could maybe explain why you weren't receiving specific reports about the water quality issue. But some of these letters that we've received have shared that they felt so kind of stupid that they had not spoken up or raised this water quality issue earlier because they just thought they had no control, no ability, that nothing would or could be done on it. So now I think people are realizing if we speak up, there might be an ability to change their conditions.
Thank you, Wookie. Like I said, we're going to go ahead and continue to do our own search. Just to let you know, the NACAL conference, the National Oversight, Law Enforcement and Corrections, was in Arizona several months ago, and I attended, and I did meet the Arizona Correctional Oversight Commission. So I'm going to be giving them a call, see if they know anything about what's happening with the water system in Arizona and their prisons as well. We'll go ahead and continue to have conversation or initiate a conversation and say, hey, ACO, you said this, Tommy, PCR, you replied with this. We feel there needs to be more looked into because the complaints are still coming in from the community. Not to us at this time, but we feel we need, when it comes to water and the well-being of our persons in custody in Arizona, we think we need to have more independent look into the matter to resolve all the questions that are being asked at this time. You okay with that?
Yes, thank you very much. The ACLU FOIA appreciates that.
And again, if you can get some of the inmates to communicate with us directly, that would help.
Yes, I
And
will do that.
Even their families.
Understood.
And just for the record, Kim, it gives us, a lot when we can say that we've been contacted by families. Yeah, and the individuals themselves, and we don't drop names, but when we have those conversations, especially at the legislature and with the department, that's why we're initiating this call and this push. Thank you for your concern.
Thank you.
Item number 9 on our agenda is the commission's
Wait,
position.
what about, don't the community have a chance?
You spoke, the community is supposed to speak before we have the discussion. Once the commission goes into their discussion, then.
Okay.
Not anymore. I'm sorry, Kat. We're trying to figure this out with OIP.
Commission's position on a new jail. Kristen, you want to open with that?
Yes. The ACLU had contacted the commission in hopes that the commission would add this topic to the agenda. In prior years, the commission has made their stance public regarding as to whether or not there should be a pause on new jail planning, potentially the size of the new jail, etc. And so I think community members were more curious now that OCCC is kind of back up in the planning stages again, and that we had just heard from UHCDC in their report what the commission's position is. And so I had asked, I had talked to Martha about this a fair amount, and I believe that she had written up a potential resolution for the commissioners to consider. And so I know the public
Really, just notes that I wrote to myself.
Yeah, just notes, but I know that the community needs opportunity to publicly comment, but I think that's the gist of what we're looking at today is getting an understanding of where the commission's at with the new jail planning for OCCC.
And I had to dig through some old notes because if you remember the first 2.5 years we met, we had no staff. And so I had to find this information again. Anyway, since its inception, the commission has been very concerned about the planning and development of the new OCCC OCCC. We found a replacement facility is much needed, but we disagree with the size and scope of the new facility as promoted by the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation and Accounting and General Services. In our December 2020 meeting, the commission recommended the state pause its planning and establish a community advisory group to help explore policies, practices, and programs that can provide alternatives to detention in a secure facility. In January 2022, we reaffirmed that position, again urging an advisory committee be convened to review and, if necessary, revise the planning that has been done as of the time and actively participate in the planning going forward. That second letter we wrote was in response to a report that Bob Merce put out about the correctional facilities and the new jail, and we really relied on that when we were making our decision. Our request for an advisory commission committee was not considered by the department. Yet an alternative process for engaging community and considering alternatives to secure detention was implemented. And this was under Max Otani. He got in touch with the School of Architecture and the Community Design Center to help shepherd this through. Many of the people that are at this meeting right now have attended some of these gatherings that the university has held. So the purpose of engaging the design center was to quote, engage diverse stakeholders to co-envision an alternative program and facility model for the proposed jail site in Palava and a pathway towards community-based continuum of care. They have completed its work and presented its findings to DCR and DAGS. In our November 2024 meeting, the commission voted to strongly support the work that they completed in their design concept that supports a humane and rehabilitative environment. They did not present a design of what the facility should look like. They presented concepts, and we agreed and voted on supporting those concepts. At the request of ACLU, the commission is once again considering its position on the redevelopment of OCCC in Halava through the following motions. And I have a couple of motions because I want to separate different issues within this. So my first motion is, I move the commission support the decision of the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation and the Department of Accounting and General Services to replace the current OCCC, which is dilapidated and beyond rehabilitation.
So Martha, if just before any type of voting or discussion from
right. I'm sorry, I'm getting
that's
used
okay.
to it.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to read the motion or how you wanted to go about, but I want to make sure you were able to get the background.
We'll end with that and hold off on the motion and then let the people, let the community comment with any comments that we have at this time after hearing Martha.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I wanted to make one adjustment. I apologize. This specific request was actually not from the ACLU. It was from the Reimagining Public Safety Coalition, and Liam Chin is here today representing that coalition. I apologize for that misspeak.
Thank you. I'll look at hands or say your name because go ahead, Bob. You're muted.
You're
Bob.
muted, Bob.
You're still muted, Bob.
We still can't hear you, Bob. Can't hear you.
We'll do the next one.
No. No, still cannot hear you.
You may have to sign back in.
Bob, you might have to go out and sign back in. In the meantime, I'll have some Liam, you can go ahead. Liam, sorry.
Okay, great. Before my time starts, I'm just a little unclear on what's happening here. Are we speaking to a motion? I'm a little confused because my understanding was there would be a vote where the commission would be taking a position today on whether they support the current proposal by DCR for the $1 million jail. So I'm not clear before I testify here what it is we're testifying on.
You proposed a motion. I will say we're not accepting that motion. We're coming up with our own motions on the issue of what we support in the jail, in the location of it, and whether we support a pause or not. So it's going to be a series of motions.
Okay, does it make sense for us to hear those motions and then comment?
This is where we're getting confused about what OIP requires. Because once we start our discussion, it's supposed to be just among the commissioners and not the public participating in our discussion. So I'm a little confused, Liam, on that.
Okay, yeah, I think stating the motion is not considered discussion. It's like reading out a bill summary language. You're stating that you don't have to comment on it. You just say these are the motions. Period, and then we comment on it, and then you guys have a discussion about said motions, like similar to legislation. We need to understand what these motions are.
Do you want me to read them all?
No, we'll go one by one.
One by one. Okay, so the first one is, I move the commission support the decision of the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation and the Department of Accounting and General Services to replace the current OCCC, which is dilapidated and beyond rehabilitation.
Is there a second?
Wait, before you vote.
We'll have the discussion now.
So you have to make sure that the public gets to comment before actually voting. So I think what Liam is asking is that you just read each of the motions so that the public knows what they're commenting on. And then once those are read, like don't vote, don't make any decisions, but let the public comment and then vote and discuss, or I'm sorry, discuss and vote and make your decisions.
So should I read them one at, read one, then comment, then read another one, then comment, then read another one and comment? Is that how
I think you just read them all and then we'll
You
just
could,
comment.
but
They're all
yeah,
related.
I think you could just read them all and then have
Okay.
people
Yeah.
comment. It'll be, yeah. I
So
think
the second one is, I move the commission support the selection of the former Halaba animal quarantine site as appropriate for the new facility. Number 3, I move the commission recommend and support diversion programs and alternatives to incarceration to reduce the number of beds currently proposed by DCR for the new OCCC. Number 4, I move the commission support a design that provides appropriate programming space and opportunities for the detention population. And number 5, I move the commission not support a pause in the planning and design of the new facility. So that's it. So Liam, you want to start?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So I'll start. Thank you for that. That's very helpful. So in line, I represent the Reimagining Public Safety Coalition who requested this vote and motion. Currently, 40% of all the people sitting in jail in Hawaii are houseless. 60% are pre-trial and are sitting in jail simply because they cannot afford bail. So basically, most of the people sitting in jail right now shouldn't be there. Jails have become the place where we warehouse our most vulnerable residents, as you know, people with mental illness, substance addiction, and so forth. The governor recently acknowledged that we cannot arrest our way out of these problems. And over the past several years, a robust diversion mandate has been growing here in Hawaii that from police to prosecutors to public defenders, there is agreement that we need to be systematically diverting these vulnerable residents out of jail and into treatment and permanent supportive housing. What this means is that the jail population will be significantly reduced. So when we look at the current DCR proposal for 1,300 plus beds, it keeps changing for $1 billion. This is wildly out of step with what is happening, not just on the ground in the community among advocates, but actually in the rooms where police, prosecutors, and all these other key justice system actors have created agreements. So we absolutely need to hit pause on this wrong-headed super jail proposal and sit down and pivot towards developing an appropriate solution that takes into account the significant decarceration that is going to take place in this state. At the same time, I think it's, as we talk about what to replace OCCC with, this is absolutely critical. The state has both a housing and a public health crisis. It cannot afford to fund something in the magnitude of $1 billion or even $500 million, while at the same time funding diversion infrastructure. What we have heard from key justice system actors that will be making diversion happen is that the reason it is currently not working well is the severe underfunding of diversion infrastructure. What is diversion infrastructure? It's places to divert people to, right? We constantly hear from police, we constantly hear from prosecutors, divert them to where? We need, for example, 24/7 supportive housing for justice-involved individuals. So instead of sitting in jail while they wait trial, they sit in community. We cannot afford to fund both a brand new jail and to fund diversion infrastructure. We need to be speaking in the magnitude of hundreds of millions of dollars to make diversion work, is the bottom line. You can't have both. We cannot afford even a smaller facility. What we can afford is, and I know there's disagreement here, is renovation. Fulton County, where Atlanta is, just abandoned plans on a $1.7 billion super jail for this exact reason. And they're moving forward with an extensive renovation of $250 million. We have that same opportunity here to do something that's fiscally responsible and absolutely is in line with the diversion mandate. Again, I just want to repeat, cannot afford both. And if we build a new, even smaller facility, the reality is the cost is going to be enormous. We know how public works projects go here in Hawaii. We know that if you say it's going to cost 500 million, it's going to end up at 800 million and beyond. So the last thing I want to say is, as you consider these motions, it's important that the commission be very specific in terms of a price of not to exceed. So for example, if you support renovation, I would appreciate the commission saying at a price not to exceed. If you support a smaller facility at the Halava site, animal quarantine site, say at a price not to exceed. And if you believe that that's not a reasonable request, I would just remind you that DCR has had no problem saying we're asking for $1 billion. That's a specific price tag. So if they're going to get specific, we need to get specific and understand that if we do not fund diversion infrastructure and a magnitude similar to the jail that we're talking about in the hundreds of millions, it will not work. So this is a choice in front of us. The state cannot afford both. And I would greatly appreciate during these motions that you consider a pause and just a reload. Pause does not mean decisions and actions won't continue to be made. It just means that we're going to pivot away and we disagree with the $1 billion proposal, and we're going to talk about what makes sense. A pause does not mean we're going to do nothing. Thank you for your consideration today. I actually really appreciate the work that you all do, and we are in agreement that the conditions are unacceptable, no CCC, and something needs to be done. But certainly we can find a way more cost-effective and more a solution that is in line with the diversion mandate. Thank you for your time.
Go ahead, Bob. Thank you, Liam.
Am I finally unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. A couple of things. Number one, I would encourage the commission at this point not to vote on any of these motions, because the situation that we're dealing with is a very, very big, complex situation. The motions are very abbreviated and could really be misinterpreted. And I think what we would really benefit from would be a long statement, a relatively complete statement about the commission's position with respect to the new jail, rather than a brief motion that could be interpreted in a number of ways. I'd like to make it just a couple of points. Number one, the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation has not released any new plans for the new jail since 2019, when it published the OCCC master plan. We have no information whatsoever on what the department and its consultants want the jail to be. We have heard that they want to build a rehabilitative jail, but they've even called it a place of healing. But we've never seen any evidence that what they're talking about and planning will be those things. All we have right now is the 2019 plan. It's for an old-fashioned jail. It's out of date, obsolete, punitive, custody and control, and it may look nice from the outside, but it will incorporate all of the old problems of the old jail and will continue to produce bad outcomes. That is, the sort of the first point I would like to make. If you'll indulge me for a moment, some of the other issues are specifically, I think one of the motions had to do with the site, and I really believe that the animal quarantine station is not an adequate site for this new jail. You cannot put, from all the research that we have done, and I'm referring to the Correctional Reform Working Group, you can't put a 1,300 bed jail and reentry facility into a 19-acre site and not make terrible design compromises. You're going to have to build high up. You're going to have multi-story. You're not going to have outdoor recreation. You're not going to have a view and landscaping outside that would help with rehabilitation. You cannot build a rehabilitative site on that property. I know that a lot of money has been spent doing the environmental impact statements. But we looked at Las Colinas. It's same size, 1,200 beds instead of 1,300 beds. They have instead of 19 acres, they have got 45 acres, and that's what you need to build a campus-style 21st century jail that really is rehabilitative. So I think that is really important. There's never been a public airing of the use of a public-private partnership on the new jail. I think that is a terrible idea because they keep hearing that, well, you can transfer risk from the government to the private partnership. Well, that's true, you can, but when you do that, believe me, the private partner is going to make you pay for that. I mean, there's no free lunch. You want a private corporation to assume risk, they're going to amortize that risk, and they're going to charge you for it, and they'll assume it, but you're ultimately going to pay for it. It just makes no sense. 30% or 40%, as Liam said, of the jail population is homeless when they come into the jail. There's no plans to do anything about that. And we feel very strongly that if you're going to build a jail, part of the jail has got to be building housing in the community for the people who are coming out of the jail, basically. And of course, one of the things that's most important is that a new report is coming out from very soon, maybe within the week or two, from the Community Design Center. They've already previewed some of the ideas that they have. We now know what the community wants a lot more, and what the community wants is not the kind of jail that the department has been planning for the last 7 or 8 years. So there's just an awful lot of things going on here. But what I think is most important is that a new report is going to come out with some new ideas. I agree with Liam and the organization he represents that we should not go forward with any planning of the new jail that the department has been working on for the past X number of years, 7, 8, or 9 years. What we need to do, though, is to really start working on those diversions so that we can build a smaller jail. We have to ask hard questions as to why the department has not followed the advice of their own consultants to reduce the jail population. They could save literally hundreds of millions of dollars if they would follow the recommendations of Pulitzer, Bogart, and Associates that they have made. So, I just think at this point, what and last and probably most important is that the whole planning system that they have come up with still does not include anybody from the community. There's no community input in this. The judiciary has not been consulted. The judiciary is not part of the planning process. The people of Hawaii who have this really tremendous amount of knowledge, people like Kat Brady, people like the people who are here, we have not been heard. The department has not taken any of our ideas into account. They have mental health problems. We have Dr. Pablo Stewart here, who's one of the country's leading experts on mental health for incarcerated people. They've never even talked to him about what things should look like. So it's just we need to get the community involved, and the Correctional Reform Working Group we will be submitting probably a bill and a resolution that would mandate the bill would mandate a community engagement or community impact committee be formed to be a full partner going forward in every aspect of the planning of all new correctional facilities in the state, and that this committee of citizens from the community would be full partners in developing the RFP for any new correctional facilities and for deciding on any proposals that are made. And we hope you will support that bill, and we'll have a resolution as a backup on that, just in case the bill doesn't pass. But we need to get the community involved in this whole process. But going back and ending now, I just think the motions. This is not the time to really take a position on that. I think you need to take a position. I think it needs to be a much longer statement about what we really want in this community, about the new jail, and about the infrastructure that we need to divert and build a smaller jail. That we could help you draft that, but I'm just very uncomfortable with these very short motions because they just don't capture the scope of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Hey, good morning. My name is Nathan Lee. I'm with the Reimagining Public Safety Commission, a coalition, and I want to speak on this kind of important moment, especially before the state kind of ties its hands with funding a new jail. And so, in all my free time, I'm also a PhD student, so I like data and I like evidence, and so I want to read some of that and look at some examples from other states as well. So, as has been mentioned,
about 2 minutes.
yes, it'll be quick. I'll be quick. 60% of our population is pretrial, and again, there's been studies that found that if we reduce our pretrial detainees by half, we'd save the state government $16 million a year. And then further, because these individuals have not been convicted of any crime, there's also evidence from across the country that suggests that the longer people are held pretrial, there's a criminogenic effect. So this increases the likelihood, right, that they will have these cascading effects on their employment, housing stability, child custody. And so I think what's important to highlight is that, pretrial reforms work, and they kind of obviate the need for more prisons, for bigger prisons, and instead of doing something like renovation or improving conditions within existing facilities. So there's a 2023 study that I shared, but it looked at 13 states and cities and found after pretrial reforms, there were no negative effects on public safety, and actually reoffense or rearrest rates for the people who have been held declined. New Jersey is an especially good example. Basically elimination of cash bail reform led to a 20% reduction in the jail population and a decrease in crime, which included violent crime. And then in Cass County, Indiana, I think also notably, they had an 80% reduction in their pretrial population following reform, and that saved about $1 million in detention costs, right? So building a newer, bigger jail every generation is not going to serve the public, and it won't serve the public better than renovation, reform, and smart investments, as has been mentioned, into rehabilitation and diversion. And an analogy is, if your sink is overflowing, you don't put bigger and bigger bowls underneath it to catch the water. You want to turn off the tap. And so I think, building a bigger and bigger jail every 30 years is not necessarily going to solve problems, but we have evidence-backed solutions from other states and other cities that can help, obviate the need for this jail. And so I think, tying up our funds to this kind of supposed solution without any real evidence to back it would be unwise. And we can create better outcomes through looking at some of the policies from other states and through supporting measures that really make us think through what we're doing in the present that can have downstream effects in the future, rather than just jumping ahead to that time when we may not even need these kind of billion-dollar jails. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to.
Do you have any comments?
Thank you, Nate. Go ahead, Nikos.
Aloha, members. Let me first comment about the critical importance of data. Collecting, reporting, disseminating, and using data to inform decision-making is vital in the pursuit of a public policy that values and operationalizes continuous quality improvement. Qualities articulated in DCR's mission statement, professionalism, integrity, respect, and fairness, are furthered by the use of data. As such, DCR should provide greater clarity about its plans for a new jail facility, including the selection of a more appropriate location than Halava, and greater opportunities for the public and community experts to provide input on the record. The state must invest in building the capacity to provide drug treatment and mental health services in every major county. Jail construction should be forestalled until there is a more substantial investment in these services and tangible reforms to reduce the jail population, including the reduction of the number of those on probation and curbing the use of cash bail. Here are some key data points recent from the Kaiser Family Foundation. In May 2022, among adults in Hawaii who reported experiencing symptoms of anxiety or depressive disorder, 24% reported needing counseling or therapy, but not receiving it in the past 4 weeks. In the most recent past year, the number of individuals reporting needing but not receiving treatment for alcohol use, 64,000. Alcohol is the most widely abused substance in our state. Individuals reporting but not receiving treatment for illicit drug use in the past year, 29,000. Governor Greens recognizes the need for more treatment across the state. In the introduction to his governor's budget summary, he highlighted adding 7.0 full-time employees, advanced practice registered nurses, and 8.0 full-time employee registered nurse positions over the next 2 fiscal years for the provision of certified community behavioral health clinical services on Maui, Hawaii, Kauai, and Oahu community mental health services centers. The current criminal legal system very effectively criminalizes behavioral health problems, poverty, and the lack of housing. Placing those with pre-existing health conditions in carceral settings will worsen their health status. Those who are prone to developing more serious problems will also be negatively impacted. Let's be clear. Incarceration is latently injurious to individual health, and those with behavioral health problems are better served by access to safe and stable housing and needed medical care. Persons who are incarcerated are disproportionately affected by a range of chronic illnesses, including substance misuse, mental health problems, diabetes, high blood pressure, HIV, and viral hepatitis. So mahalo for the opportunity to provide testimony today.
Thank you, Nico. Scott?
Aloha, commissioners and community. You know, we're ignoring the 800-pound gorilla in the middle of the room, and that is what leads people to jail. And it's unaddressed, unresolved problems that they have had from some of the most impacted communities that we have on Oahu. So to say we're going to do more while people are in jail, we need to really think about who should actually be in jail. And I think Liam and Nikos have outlined why we're in this mess, because the department is not a mental health provider. They don't know how to deal with this. And this is what we're seeing. People with mental health problems are the people who can't get out of jail. They're given an order, they get it, 5 minutes later, it's gone. So what are we doing? We're incarcerating, we're criminalizing poverty. People who can't make bail, people who have multiple problems that have been unaddressed for decades. And the solution has been just get them out of the community, lock them up so we don't have to think about that. That's ridiculous. And in the governor's current budget in brief, he's allocating $30 million in fiscal year 26 for a new OCCC. Come on, the governor is a doctor. We know that there are many people in prison who need multiple cares, health care, mental health care, behavioral health. What are we doing? We're locking people up. We're saying we're giving you housing in jail. That is against the Aloha Spirit Law. It is against how we live in Hawaii. What if people decided to just lock their kids up because they're misbehaving? Come on, let's get real. We need to address the problems that have been festering in the community for decades. Thank you.
Any other testimonies that I can call upon at this time?
Carrie Ann. Oh.
Aloha, Commissioners. Carrie Ann Chirota for ACLU Hawaii. We urge the Oversight Commission to vote in favor of diversion and a pause in the planning and construction of DCR's current proposed new $1 billion expanded bed capacity jail. The new larger jail proposed by the department is flawed for the following reasons. It will not address the drivers of the revolving door to OCCC, nor will it end the overcrowding and suffering that exists at OCCC right now and years down the road before this proposed jail is built. It underestimates the capacity and the power of diversion to reduce the number of people who are in our jails, not only at CCC, but overall. It also ignores falling crime rates, which was just acknowledged by Prosecutor in a recent interview. A new larger jail is based upon flawed jail capacity projections. It also ignores the reductions in the jail population during COVID through intergovernmental policies, including issuance of citations instead of arrests, and the current substantial reductions at MCCC. If we fail to stop the flow of people to OCCC through data-driven strategies, this new OCCC jail will fill, and DCR will be asking for more money from the next generation of lawmakers to build a bigger jail, just like what happened in Utah. Our state has limited funds, and we cannot afford to build both a $1 billion jail and to adequately fund diversion staffing, infrastructure, and resources, primarily a lack of supportive housing in our community and a lack of treatment in our community. Diversion will help to turn off the tap and stop the flow of people who are in our jails and prisons, who are poor, houseless, and disproportionately falls upon the Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and other racial communities. We also need to recognize the harm that exists. There is a lack of services at OCCC, increased risk of suicide. I just want to take a little time. I know other people have had. We've already spent over $10 million in consultant contracts. We've spent $10 million to Architects Hawaii. We are proposing to spend another $30 million for more jail planning. So this amounts to over $50 million for this jail planning phase. The only people who have benefited from this is consultants. And it's very telling that the department is not present today, but a lobbyist from Core Civic is in this room. And the department is proposing to spend $10 million for master planning. The last master planning correctional report, which looks at the entire system, was in 2003. They're proposing to spend next year $10 million for master planning. Why would you proceed with this proposed jail without completing that master planning? And we just want to say that our jails are understaffed. Building a new larger jail does not magically resolve staffing issues. And finally, expending bed capacity and locking up more people results in increased operational costs. We're spending nearly $95,000 to lock up one adult in our carceral system. This money can and must be invested in diversion. For these reasons, we urge the Oversight Commission to vote in favor and support of diversion and pausing planning and construction of the DCR's proposed $1 billion public-private partnership, 1,300 bed people jail. We must increase investment in what makes us safe to the scale required to meet the needs of our community. Please support diversion and community care first, jails last. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie Ann. Appreciated that. Any last community comments at this time?
Yeah. Very briefly, because I think I'll be eating by the horse here. My name is Emily Sarasa. I'm also part of the coalition. Hello, everyone. And I just want to raise 2 points. The first is your own. Huh?
No wonder you look so
yeah, I've been here before. So just reiterating your own points that DCR is mismanaging facilities currently. Do we want to entrust them with more responsibility, a bigger facility, and really just giving more funding towards something that isn't really improving the situation? And again, that's what you have stated, and no one's here from DCR to even address that point. That makes me quite upset also, because these are difficult conversations, and they should be here to address all of this. And then also the UHCBC design, I went to those meetings as well. That's not a jail facility. that is what everyone here is calling for. It is
It's
really,
not a design either, it's a concept.
it's a concept. So that
It's not a
concept,
design goal.
it's not a jail. It's not. It's what everyone's calling for. It is housed under DCR for some reason, or it may be, and we hope it's not. But my background, I just graduated law school, and both of my parents are police officers, so I grew up hearing stories about the types of calls that they're getting called to, and truly, this is the wrong answer to all these other problems. And I hate that the onus is put on you and on DCR to address them, but I would rather you as a commission shift the onus back to other agencies and say this is your responsibility to deal with them proactively instead of building this jail to do nothing, continue the
There's
problem.
something else we're gonna discuss a little further in.
Okay, great. So yeah, just I think now is the time to pause and not continue. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Luana?
Any? Luana?
Hi, thank you. My name is Luana Peterson. I'm speaking on behalf of Reimagining Public Safety. And thank you for taking the time to hear our feedback and what we have to offer to this challenge that we find ourselves addressing. And I'd like to start off by saying that this is a very personal issue for me. Unfortunately, I have extensive lived experience with the carceral system, generations long. And you might say that we're at risk, but what I would like to emphasize is that we are at risk, and this is part of the solution. We are at risk for being impacted from a system that's fundamentally flawed and inequitable. And the greatest impact we have experienced is not what happens during incarceration or after, but what happens before, how we engage the infrastructure and institutions and culture of our community. And I'm happy to offer that some of those experiences as ideas for solutions. But what I would like to strongly recommend, is that we hear from our community and from those most impacted, because the solutions are there. Jails are not intended to be a short-term solution. They're not a place for treatment or healing. Our communities are meant to do that. And the bottom line is that Hawaii cannot afford to both fund this massive jail project and make the significant investments required to address the housing and public health crisis gripping our communities. Resources are limited, and we know that. And so we must allocate them where they will have the greatest impact, and that is within our communities. Community-based programs are severely underfunded, I'm not sure why, but have consistently demonstrated better outcomes in incarceration, and I know this for a fact. For example, the Permanent Supportive Housing, or PCH, is a proven cost-effective solution that significantly reduces recidivism. Honolulu's Housing First program shows that housing a person costs $20,000 to $30,000 annually compared to $95,000 to incarcerate someone. That's a huge disparity. Furthermore, a study by Partners in Care found that the recidivism rate for those receiving housing support is just 12.8%. So stable housing, mental health care, addiction treatment, and employment support, these are the interventions that actually reduce reoffending and provide pathways to stability. The government and state officials have claimed to intend to divert houseless individuals, those with mental illness, and people struggling with substance addiction out of jail and into treatment and services. But spending $1 billion on a new jail directly contradicts this commitment. If we truly want to address the challenges we see in our beloved community, we must stop this ineffective and wasteful proposal and redirect these resources towards solutions that we know work, solutions that support people, address root causes, and build safer and healthier communities. Thank you.
Mahalo, Luana. One more, and then you, Ron.
Yes. Ohana Hopakele was started concerning the disproportionate number of Kanakas in prison. And we feel that you have to move away from punishment and move towards healing. And we thought with the name change from Department of Public Safety to Department of Correctional and Rehabilitation was a move in that direction. We thought that the Oversight Commission started off saying that we don't agree with the building of new prisons. So Ohana Opakele, even in our mission statement, we have stop the building of a new prison or a prison in disguise. So we advocate for any diversion programs and not the building of prisons. So we advocate, please cause for a pause and rethink the schedule so we can all together join in improving the system. And I think the previous speakers have all been advocating for the same thing, and I think we should listen and join together in working towards building that new system. Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. Tony. Thank you, everybody.
No, it's not.
It's the most. I can go around right now, and I appreciate all the comments, heartfelt, your passion. We're gonna go around, talk to the commissioners at this time. Mike, you want to lead off on your comments?
I'm kind of, ultimately, I like to think I'm a bit of a peacemaker and a mediator, but the one thing in mediation we do, you don't bid against yourself. What does that mean? The director's not here, his staff's not here. So I'm almost in the position one to Honolulu, take a pass on this. If pressed, I would be for a pause and diversion. That's it. Because I don't like, I'm very unhappy that the department isn't here. I need to hear from them. As I mentioned before, even Coach Deion Sanders talked to Miss Peggy, who's 100 years old. He's open to feedback. Where's the director? Where's his staff? So that's my position, Mark. And if you need me to push me more, I can be pushed. Thank you.
And that was good, Mike. Thank you so much. Judge Browning?
Yes. I mean, I want to thank all the testifiers. I thought they really stated eloquently in a profound way the issues and the problems that this community is facing. And the problem with just the idea of a new jail is just so myopic. It doesn't look at all the various different issues that have been articulated by our speakers. I respect totally what Judge Town has said about waiting on a vote. I understand that, but the department chose not to attend. They knew about the agenda. They were sent the agenda. They knew all the information. So I'm not willing to, I'm not in favor of passing this issue down to the next meeting so that they can appear and respond. I think we know from their prior responses what likely they will say. And I don't believe that anything they will say based upon the totality of every concern that we are having to measure and weigh will in any way convince me otherwise. So I am in strong favor of pausing.
Ronald? You still there?
Ronnie Barra, if you have your mute on, you better turn it off. Oh, he left. Okay, I know that not all of you have been with us from the beginning, but there was nothing that was stated today about diversion that is not repeating what we have said for the past 5 years. And for many of us who have been involved with corrections for 50 years, which is my experience now, we've tried to make these changes so many times. And I mean, the last big effort was with the Justice Reinvestment Initiative 10 years ago, which I was very, very involved with. As Kat was presenting about, we got to look at what forms these populations, where do they come from? Kat, if you remember the very first time you had a meeting, in your handouts, you included my comments about Gene Kassenbaum's study on Hawaiians in the justice system. Everything you said is what I said 30 years ago. So I want you to know we're all in favor of diversion. From the beginning, though, we have taken the position that OCC must be replaced. Anybody who thinks it can be rehabilitated has not been inside that facility. It is beyond rehabilitation. But we have also always stated the size that they are proposing is way too big and diversions have to be implemented to reduce that size. And that we do not believe they are providing enough program space for the detention population. So that has been our stance in the past. It's never been that we have been against building a new facility, but it can't be the size it's going to be. So I just want to state what I hope all of you show up to the legislature, because that's where these voices need to be heard. That's the only thing that will stop this train from going down the track. And again, our commission is 100%, is 1,000% behind diversions and programming for those who are incarcerated and reentry programs. I'm sorry I get a little defensive, but you know, you get the feeling that we don't care, and we care very, very much.
There's the added part that we bring to the game is because we've been in the facilities. So it's not just OCCC. There's other facilities worse off than OCCC in its operations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm gonna go. Many of you know I'm the current administrator of the Hawaii Youth Correctional Facility. Well, in the past 5 years, back in 2019, the legislature gave me $1 million to plan and renovate my campus. Yeah. I'm going back this ledge and I'm gonna ask for another $3 million. Yeah, of planning. Okay. Now I'm sharing that with you because I understand the planning process. And it's been 5 years. Yeah, it's long. Right. But I'm not increasing the beds for the incarcerated population. All my planning is diversion. Yeah. We're creating beds for homeless youth and we're creating beds for mental health. Yeah. We're going to be demolishing buildings and we're going to be building buildings. So, you know, that's what we're planning in terms of the judicial system, which is the national model right now, in terms of how Hawaii juvenile justice reform has been going on for the past decade. Thank you, Judge Browning and Martha Tornay.
For more than a decade.
For more than a decade. But I want you to understand, I understand. I understand what you're saying, because I'm doing that right now. Yeah. It's hard to imagine as a former, you know, captain at OCCC, the conditions of OCCC now and what it was 20 years ago when I was there is horrendous.
Yeah. What it was when it opened and I was there in 1980.
So there is a part of us that, you know, we want it replaced because, you know, when you see in the medical unit, you got guys on the floor. Yeah. The mental health is atrocious. Yeah. So there's a part of us that says, you know, it needs to be replaced. It's old, it's antiquated. And I feel sorry for the staff that I commanded back then that are still there, that are frustrated with the work conditions. Yeah. So that's another issue. We are, you know, when I talked about 2025 legislative session, we are coming out with a staff wellness report, and we're coming out with the reentry report. And both of those are going to be not going to make DCR happy. And they're going to receive the reports first, as we always do with DCR. But they're going to further put into the minds of the legislature, this is the current status of your system. Yeah. And a lot of it is looking at when we go into the legislative session, we're going to be providing them with the appropriate information on whether or not what direction they want to go. Now, in the past, with information that we've gave, we saw no funding for this planning come about. Yeah, if you folks remember Chair Luke, the House Finance, right? We're looking at 2 brand new public safety chairs. Yeah, Elefante in the Senate, and we're looking at Bellotti in the House. You folks didn't know that, but those are significant changes. Seasoned politicians who I believe are very supportive of the commission. Yeah. Dela Cruz and Yamani are the financial committees. And I believe the judicial committees are on, have always been briefed by us on what we're doing here as well. You know, so from my perspective, I agree with a pause, but I also we want to say that we have to replace it. It just has to replace it. It cannot, planning just has to continue. And it's frustrating for me because it's like talking to a blank wall, like Bob and, you know, Kathy, Kat, you guys know, it makes like it's simple decisions that can be made to move in a certain direction that's just not being made right now. Okay. And so that's where our frustration is at this particular point in time. So Martha, is there any ideas?
There's no motion we need.
Yeah.
But again, we have to have our voices heard at the legislature. Everybody needs to show up. Bob and Kat are always there. There are other people that are there. But what I heard this morning, if the legislature is hearing that same thing and the voices are as loud as they are today, it can make a difference. And I really urge you folks to assist us. And we're willing to coordinate testimony so that we're all, make sure we're not contradicting each other as we're presenting our testimony. We're supporting each other and getting this achieved, but we need your voices.
Could I just, one last point I want to make, and to follow up with what Chair Patterson has just said, I think Bob Merce made an excellent point, and that is that how a motion does not really fully, how we vote on a motion doesn't fully reflect all the various different nuances that we need to articulate so that we have a clear position going into the legislature. So I agree with him in that we should put this down in some sort of longer statement about this important issue that includes your concerns as well, Mark, and others.
Christian, I'm going to give you some floor space now if you want to make any comments.
Oh, sure. I obviously agree with however the commission wants to move forward. I will say that I feel like my stance has always been that the level of suffering that I have seen in the facilities makes it extremely difficult for me to go against any type of replacement for the correctional facilities, and suffering not just for those who are living in those conditions, but those who are working in those conditions. And additionally, of course, I agree with diversion efforts, and I hear the research about, cutting the population in half. I don't disagree with any of that. But my concern is, what about those who are left in the facilities? What about those who aren't diverted? What about those who do have serious charges, who, in accordance to our criminal justice system, need to be there throughout their trial that could last years long? So I think that there's room for both. I agree that the state in prior years has not prioritized both. I agree with that. But for me, it's very difficult for me to come to a stance and say the facility planning needs to be paused or there shouldn't be a new facility created because of potential diversion, opportunities, or focusing on mental health, these different, I think we can do both. I think we need to do both. But the level of suffering that's happening in these facilities, it can't continue. These conversations have continued, 10 years ago. And if the planning continued 10 years ago, we could have had a new facility now. And so, I know that that's not in total agreement with what we've heard from community members today. I absolutely respect what everybody has said. But again, based on what I've seen, I just want to be truthful. with my personal stance. You know, with that said, at the end of the day, I of course support whatever the commission, you know, however the commission wants to move forward. You know, but yeah, I think that's all I want to add. But thanks for the opportunity, Mark.
Thank you, Christian. And that's just, you know, because you've been going around talking to a lot of people at all levels, and I just want to give you a say and share some of the things that you saw. So what I'm hearing, Judge Browning, is if I can give some kind of closure to what we just had. You know, I think we're all on the same page. I know we're all on the same page. It's how do we look at it in a linear way? Yeah. What is the next step? What is the next step? What is the next step? Because at every angle we can throw in something on the side. Yeah. Because in my mindset, and after 2 years of visiting these facilities, you know, you don't in all the planning that we're hearing, you don't hear what is DCR's plan for managing mental health. What is DCR's plan for medical? What is DCR's plan to reinvigorate correctional industries? What is their plan for programs? And, you know, my biggest issue with programs is they always talk about evidence-based, but that's only an X amount of beds, and the majority of the beds is not evidence-based. It's what other activities do you have to support your evidence base? And that's the real programming, you know, recreation, you know, other things, and just
education,
faith-based programs, you know, just things that are not researched, but engage socially while they're in there with each other and volunteers. So there's a lot of things, a huge spectrum of what's not being said. Yeah. You know, and so I think what we want to do, and I think we can do it effectively, is to create that statement, as Judge Browning said, this is where we are right now with the current planning. These are all the issues that have not been addressed in your planning process. And whether or not do we really want to continue to put money into it, as they refuse to speak about the biggest issues that we see as a community and as a commission. Yeah, because you're just looking at a structure, you're not telling us about the system. Yeah, and you know, it really irritates me when they started throwing all the rhetoric on this new facility using rehabilitation and healing when they're not even doing it now. Yeah, so that's our commitment. Yeah, Commissioner.
I totally agree with you,
okay.
Mark. I couldn't have said it better, and that's exactly how I feel.
We'll have something out, everyone. Let me see. Pledge opens when, Kat?
Third Wednesday.
Third Wednesday. Is that the 25th or the 18th? We do have a meeting on January 16th.
That's the day after opening.
Yeah.
That's the day after opening.
Yeah.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark, real quick. We, so the commission had just changed its meeting schedule. So the commission will be meeting on the second Tuesday of each month instead of Tuesday. The commission will be meeting on the second Thursday of each month instead of the third
Can
Thursday.
y'all hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you, but we're disconnected visually.
Kristen, can you hear us?
I can hear and see you.
Okay, hold
Okay,
on.
everyone.
We just need to fix the audio here because I don't know. We had a technical issue.
Just use the computer.
That's okay.
For the other commissioners, while they work on that, our next meeting will be January 9th. Legislative opening day is January 15th. And so I think what Mark was getting at is that we will either have a letter written for the next meeting on the 9th or before opening day on the 15th.
Because they talked about changing it to the second Thursday, remember?
Okay. The 9th, Christine, is what I heard you say?
Yes.
I was just making assumptions that, well, yeah, for our next meeting. And then I was making assumptions you either want the letter ready for our next meeting or before opening day.
Okay, and by that next meeting, Christian, will our 2 reports be ready and submitted?
The staffing report and the annual report will be submitted.
Okay.
Mark Patterson? Mark?
Particular point in time, when the next agenda comes out for our next meeting, it would be attached to it would be our position paper.
Yes. Mark?
And
Go ahead, Mike.
I would hope a transcript of this very robust, positive, rich discussion could go to the governor's office vis-a-vis Mark or whoever can do that. I think it's very important. This is a signal meeting, and I would hope that he knows that DCR wasn't here and how appalled we all are that they weren't here. And I don't mean that personally because I understand everybody's role, but that's my take.
Kristen, our videos are still online, right?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. We'll make those emails to the appropriate legislative individuals to review this particular video.
And Mark, if I could just ask one question for the letter, is there a general consensus from the commission of what you all want in the letter? Do you want me to follow up with you individually? How do you want me to write that letter?
I think a lot of it is going over the comments that were did today and creating an outline of what we just heard in terms of the concerns on why the pause is needed. What and kind of like what I say, what is you're talking about this, but these are all the issues you're not talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
In terms of process, I think that it's important that you send it to each commissioner for their review and to have each commissioner provide whatever input and any particular follow-up discussion that we need or that comes up with respect to some questions that individual commissioners might have.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to overthink this and overwork it. What I heard is pause and diversion. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, how hard can it be? If anything else with this crew.
I'm saying that there's more. If you're going to say diversion, you might as well say mental health. You might as well say homeless.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's not going to be a 2-worded letter.
No. Pause is until we, you also want to say we know it needs to be replaced.
Yeah. You have to give a reason, all the reasons why we're taking that position. I think it's important.
Right now, all the discussion has been on a building and not on the system.
Yeah.
And that's our concern.
Yeah.
What's the system plan?
Okay. I will get something up and out to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
Sorry.
No, perfect. So looking forward. Thank you.
Christian, on item number 10, did you have anything you wanted to say?
I think I wanted to say.
Good.
Yep, item number 10 came from Commissioner Torney, and so we can pass it on to her.
Well, in light of our most recent discussion, this fits right into that. We as a commission, after meetings, have been visiting the correctional facilities. I would really like to start putting more focus on programs. And there are a lot of programs out there in the community. I wanted to start visiting many of those programs, having them present at meetings to us about what they have to offer, and not spend as much time as reviewing the facilities. Because as we go to Leioapapa, not that much had changed, but we're spending a couple of hours out there. I'd rather spend a couple of hours with some of the community programs that are going to be offering the rehabilitation programs that we're looking for. And that's just my comment on that. So other commissioners?
Before you jump into commissioners, Martha, you need to open up for public comment. Friendly reminder.
Jeannie's open up for comments from the people. So look at
Tony?
Thank you. Lower my hand here. I have actually visited every facility in my capacity with Project Vision as the nurse doing testing and vaccinating during COVID. And a lot of those programs that you had mentioned, Ms. Martha, were not operating obviously during COVID, but the excuse has been continued. So many of the programs have not continued, and they are not continuing now because the excuse of COVID is still lingers. I also am a formerly incarcerated person, and I know all too well of the living conditions because I have lived in 2 of the prisons, jails and prisons. And I think that just to comment on the amount of money that has been tossed around today and the amount of money that the governor has approved for expenses that's being requested by DPS or whatever name they want to call themselves by, I have heard the same things for the last 7 years since my release. I'm also appalled that there have been no changes. There have been talks of changes. There have been things that have been discussed over and over ad nauseum. And the fact that DPS is not present continuously at each of these meetings is extremely disturbing. I wholeheartedly support the coalition in pausing this new jail. I'm all for diversion and other tactics to reintegrate people into society and put them on other tracks other than jail, because I know for myself that there are so many negatives to having spent time incarcerated and learning things that I had thought I would never ever learn just by being in that arena. It's amazing what behavioral health is truly lacking, what medical care is definitely lacking within all of our jails and prisons here. And the fact that we went without ECR, electronic health records, for almost 2 years before that system was even brought back up. And thank you to Kristen, I think this is the real reason that they got that fixed. So I would support the committee's thoughts and their further discussion before they choose to support any more money being spent on a new $1 billion jail instead of just the renovations. And I had made my own top 10 lists of, easy asks when you go into jail, easy asks when you're coming out of jail, hard asks, the top 10 things that I think should be done for all inmates. All of us have our own opinions, and I certainly have quite a few more probably than most of you, but I would venture to guess that not one of you has spent a night in one of our jails or prisons. And I hope you never have to experience that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it. Anybody else on item number 10?
I just want to respond to Tony. I'm wondering also, Tony, if I was talking about visiting community-based programs that come into, community programs that are in the community, but also in the prison. But maybe we should be also focusing more when we do visit the correctional facilities on mental health, rather than just do a tour of the facility as a whole. So I just wanted to amend what I was saying by adding that, if you think that's appropriate.
Thank you.
Luana? Leo?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to comment on priorities for this next year, as well as community-based programming visits. I think that's great. And I mean, there's so many things our coalition appreciates about the commission. One thing I would encourage you to do is to expand what you consider community-based programming as relevant to your work and mandate, which is, of course, primarily inside the facilities, jails and prisons. So, for example, my history has been as a police trainer and as a public safety guy at the front end of the equation. So over the last few years, I've been in the same room with Judge Ibarra and other folks at a lot of events, you know, at the police academy and beyond, where we're having conversations about diversion infrastructure. So, for example, I think it would be valuable for you folks to see what CORE, for example, CORE, which is the mobile crisis response run by the County of Honolulu, what they're doing out on the streets now, which has immense potential to significantly divert people at intercept 0, right? So then we're not talking about, you know, even cell block post-booking diversion. We're talking about diversion way at the front end, right? And you can start to understand from the sequential intercept model, all these opportunities. I think it would be valuable for you all. And another comment is I was at a sequential intercept model gathering on Hawaii Island that had judges, prosecutors, police, all the key players. And these are these moments where you hear, for example, that the entirety of Hawaii Island has one staff member to do cell block diversion. This is true. And he's based on the Kona Hilo side. So guess what? Kona doesn't have any sort of. So when you guys think about what does it mean to do community-based program, it's not just services, it's these other pieces of the equation. Would love to talk to you more and share those ideas about other pieces of the you know, of the continuum that you might think about visiting this year.
Thank you, Liam. Any other public testimony? I know we're going on our third hour, but real quick. So in the past, we have gone to visit the Fernhurst. Yeah, we have gone and we've been invited to gatherings put on by Big Island, going home. You know, I agree with Martha. Maybe when we start going back to the neighbor islands, we can start visiting community programs. Just to see how the transition is and listening to their concerns. Leah, when you see our reentry report, a lot of things that you just said, you will see. Okay, and I think a lot of you folks, I know all of you are going to be happy with what you see. Not really happy that it's being exposed. Okay, and so I think that as we move forward as a commission, that I agree with Martha that we will start looking at going, you know, in and around the community of our facilities, looking at both large and small community-based organizations and their asset and value to the system. Yeah, so.
You know, as in what Liam just said about that our commission is focused on what's inside, and I decided to look at our law again, and he's really right. It really, by law, it says we should look at the comprehensive offender reentry program, including facility education. That's one part of it. And then another one is the comprehensive offender reentry program to ensure that people are released in a timely manner at their minimum rather than being kept longer than that. But I don't think that we as a commission have ever interpreted it to be that we're just focusing on the inside. The reentry programs and programs in the community, also diversion programs at the very beginning, have also been a focus of ours, and we will continue to do that. So I didn't realize how much, Liam, the law was focused on just the inside, but I don't think we did.
Mark, can I make one comment?
Go ahead.
So if I could just make one comment regarding general practices of oversight. I completely support the commission in looking outside of the jails and prisons, and I agree that there's much work to be done and more to learn about, frankly, of what's working or what needs to be expanded on. But I would also say that I do think it's important for commissioners to still go into the jails and prisons. I have worked for boards in the past that never went into the facilities and would make pretty devastating decisions based on that lack of experience. And so I just wanted to make mention to that yes, I agree with the shift, but also, you know, we can't forget about, you know, what's really going on in real time, in addition to obviously the staff going in and the staff reports and whatnot.
Thank you, Kristen. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to our next meeting. Did you say it was January 9th, Kristen?
Yes, so our meetings have shifted to the second Thursday of the month, and that was a request by me, so that I can start getting reports out earlier, which the community has brought up and also OIP has brought up to us. And so the intention is that all reports that will be covered during commission meetings will be posted with the agenda 1 week before the commission meeting, so that you all have lots of time to look over all the information before public comment, before we discuss. So yes, January 9th.
That'll be 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock on January 9th.
Yep, same time.
Okay. Fellow commissioners, community, thank you. Thank you so much. Now, this is a valuable meeting, and whether you know it or not, the value is going to be for everybody who watches it after. You know, because a lot of things were said, and aloha was practiced, and I appreciate each and every one of you for your comments. I believe we all have the same goal. Yeah, and we know there's a lot ahead of us. Yeah, but I think we're gonna come out of it, and I appreciate you being here and being with us for this time period, and we hope to see you next year. Have a happy, safe holidays. Yeah, and
What was that? Yeah, that's what I was pointing to. We gotta ask.
sorry.
It's on our agenda that we are to ask for public comments on issues not on the agenda and consideration of the commission's agenda for the next meeting. So that's where we are now.
Yeah, I'm sorry about it. I got ahead of myself. So any more public testimony on things that may not have been on the next agenda that we can put on for the next meeting, please feel free at this time. Yeah.
You're muted.
Thank you so much. Also, I've been getting a lot of complaints about the Hawaii contract monitor in Saguaro. She seems to be asleep at the wheel, and we resolved one issue. She was telling people that they could not get copies of legislation, and I wrote to Tommy and just said, come on, we're talking about rehabilitation. People need to know what's going on at the legislature. Well, he fixed that one, but I've been getting more letters about her lack of interaction with our people. And she basically works for CCA, even though we're paying her. So I'm requesting a copy of the core civic policies and procedures that I have not been able to find. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. We'll look into that. Anybody else? George?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so this will be my last meeting.
Sorry, Carol.
No problem. And I'm finishing up my work with the commission at really the end of this month. And I just want to say, I've so enjoyed working with, almost everyone on this call. I know how direly important the commission's work is. And so I will be a supporter from afar. And I really wanted to thank you all for welcoming me here into Hawaii and into this work. Until next time.
So everybody, Kara Kapani, she has been and served as our first reentry specialist here in Hawaii. Most of the report, or the report itself, is initiated by her. She has been working on that for the past year, trying to get as much information out of public safety, DCR, so that we can put something together and see the status of reentry in the state of Hawaii. So it's an extensive report, and we wish she was here when it comes out and causes a stir. But she's leaving it to us. She's probably laughing about that right now. But it's a big loss for us. It's a real big loss for us. And her ability to come into Hawaii and just adjust to our culture within a year time was awesome. Yeah. And she got along real well with all the employees in all the facilities. And big loss to us. But we, like anything else, we told her, you know, she's like a lady throw in the ocean. If it comes back to the shore, she's gonna come back. So where she goes, we're gonna throw her in the ocean and see what happens. So we'll set a date. We'll set a date on the website so you guys will know, and we'll do a ceremony on that. We'll take her to the North Shore right now. But anyway, Carol, we love you and we thank you.
Oh, man, this became the father of twins. Congratulations.
So, aloha, mahalo, and have a great year. Aloha.
No?
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.